Oh wow, it's not wide at all. Let's see. That's not bad. That's fine.
That'll work.
Yeah, I'll just put it like this so we don't have to see
All right.
each other. So how do I start? Okay, so this is Cauliflower Content, episode 1. I'm with Professor Brian Herring, professor and developer, and we talked one time before, and you told me you had worked at Adobe and a lot of other companies, and that some of your I was interested in talking to you because you had like SEO on your interest description, and that kind of played into my interest in marketing.
Yeah.
Would you say that's a pretty good description of you?
I think career-wise, yeah. I've spent the last several years at Adobe in the digital marketing division, and I was working on the last project I was working on was enterprise search engine, and we were integrating machine learning and business rules into search engine optimization, or essentially rearranging search results based on machine learning criteria, things like that, that come from maybe big data stream.
Does Adobe have something similar to Google Analytics? Does it have its own kind of version of it?
Yeah, their equivalent is called Target.
Oh.
Target Analytics. And so it's a whole suite of products, but they essentially just let you measure and then optimize the performance of your website, whatever that is to you. So that oftentimes that's, maximizing sales or figuring out what's going wrong with the checkout process, if there's any navigational errors.
Oh, for Adobe products?
Well, it's mostly sold to Fortune 500 companies that have, large e-commerce websites already, and they're interested in putting tools in place so they can measure the performance, how things are going now, and they can do A/B testing, so they can send a percentage of their traffic to a slightly different experience, and then measure the difference, extrapolate, and then decide if they want to send that to the main part of the traffic.
So like retargeting?
Yeah. It's called multivariate testing, and it's very broad. It could be as small as changing a navigational element on the page and testing it out on a very small percentage of your traffic to make sure it doesn't have a negative impact. Or it could be something much more involved, like analyzing big data in real time and trying to rearrange your search results so that you'll put a very generic or broad search. Imagine maybe an e-commerce shoe site like Nike.com or something. And if you just go to their homepage and type, red running shoes, well, imagine how many different possible hits they could put in the top 3, right?
Yeah.
So then the magic is, okay, well, we need to choose from among these 100 possible choices, which would be the best to put to the top right now based on real-time data. So what's trending in social media for the brand, what events are going on at that moment, or it could be as simple as what has the highest return, what is the highest margin for the zip code that the person is searching from, things like that. So by controlling the search results order with some of those criteria, they can get incremental gains in their sales.
Yeah.
So if you have a big $100 million retail website and you're able to tweak
for each thing you want.
Yeah, if you're able to increase the the amount of sales by even 1 or 2 or 3%, by making these small technology investments, it can have a huge payoff.
Yeah. That's what I was going to ask you later, but since you brought up the machine learning, what's the difference between machine learning and AI? Is it similar at all?
They overlap a bit. AI, or artificial intelligence, is a very broad discipline that partly encompasses machine learning. Machine learning is a specialty within artificial intelligence, I would say, where you're simply applying machine learning models to problem solving using computing. So for example, a classic example would be credit card. You are applying for a new credit card, right? The credit card company is trying to assess whether you're a good risk or a bad risk. They have many, many years of data on all of their customers and how well they did, right?
Yeah.
So they give credit cards to 1 million people, and maybe say 10% of them had problems, right? Declared bankruptcy, didn't pay their bill, whatever. So they have all this data, and what they do is they analyze the data using machine learning algorithms so they can try to determine, well, what were the primary factors that the unsuccessful customers had versus the successful ones.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's surprising that it wouldn't be the things like a human being might guess, like income level, education level, things like that. You might guess, well, people who make more money should probably be better at managing their credit, right?
Yeah.
But that may not be true if you just, the machine learning algorithm just analyzes the data, and it may be something that you would never guess as a human being that has a much higher influence, such as it could be something like the first age at which you applied for credit versus how old you are now, or something like that you would never guess. Another classic example of machine learning algorithm you see all the time is Netflix. You go on Netflix, right?
Yeah.
And it knows your viewing history, and then it knows the viewing history of everybody on Netflix. And so they can correlate, people who enjoyed the movies that you like also enjoyed this, so they can make, intelligent suggestions or recommendations.
Okay, so it's just a more like comprehensive algorithm.
Yeah, it's very generically, it's coming up with mathematical models that can make predictions that hold true in the real world with typically a large stream of incoming data.
Okay.
So that's the challenge for people, is the big data part. It's very difficult for us to manage that much information, whereas computers are great at crunching numbers, but they're dumb. They don't know what anything means unless you tell them. So that's where the machine learning models come in. They say, take this stream of data and then translate that into this problem domain.
So then machine learning is a form of artificial intelligence?
I would say so. I don't know if I would get any arguments on this, but in my mind, I think of artificial intelligence as just applying computers to problems that humans typically have solved in the past. And so if you accept that broad definition, I think machine learning is within that.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
I had thought it was something kind of more abstract, but...
Well, it is. I was trying to give specific examples to make it concrete. There are many different types of machine learning. The two types I just described would be kind of in the, what's the right term for that? The supervised learning model. So you have existing data and you essentially are training the machine learning algorithm based on historical data, and then it can extrapolate from that using new data. That's the supervised learning model. There are many others. There's unsupervised learning where you just take information and it will, without really knowing what it's looking at, it will just group. It'll say, oh, here's an interesting group, a pattern of similar data. Here's another group, here's another group. And then you as a human being have to interpret that. That can be interesting for things like studying disease risk. People who have a form of cancer, and you can feed in all of their genetic information or environmental things, and they say, well, this group here got the disease and this group didn't, and then what's the difference? So the machine learning algorithm can help the humans discover those patterns and then dig deeper to see what's the root cause.
That's okay. Yeah, that's like because I took GIS, and so we would do in remote sensing class supervised and unsupervised classifications
Yes.
on land, and the supervised you can go in and create polygons on, if you want to find all grass, then you go and you make polygons in the grass, and then you can automate the rest of it and hope that the computer recognizes that color that you made.
Yeah, that's a great example of the same type of thing. You teach it using a subset of the information, and then it extrapolates from that.
Right.
That's right. That's the idea.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. It's AI has been around a long time. It's only just within the last 5 years, let's say, that it's really taken off and become profitable for corporations. So there's a huge investment in machine learning, data science.
Did you work at all with, or do you know any of the kind of technology behind the voice recognition, like how you were talking about red, if I'm looking for red shoes, and how voice recognition is making it so that things are a lot more descriptive and you can narrow down your...
Achieve a full-scale, human-capable computer. In other words, a computer algorithm or a machine that's capable of doing anything that an intelligent person could do.
Mm.
We're moving towards that, but we're not quite there yet. There are lots of little pieces. That voice recognition is one of them, but there are many others.
Yeah, some of it kind of freaks me out a little bit.
It is kind of scary. Depends on if you believe in the dystopian model or where the computers take over. And
I'm kind of into all that stuff.
Or there's also a good story where computers just help us solve big problems, and we keep control of them and they help us.
Well, I'm sure they already do help us, but just like one of the new things I saw as these commercials for the Google Pixel, where there's like a famous person and then right next to them is their fake body,
virtual equivalent.
Yeah. And so just seeing that into the future where all of a sudden people are using a lot more virtual reality, people are looking at their screens more, and then one day your double is going to be on some screen somewhere, sounds just like you. And
it's so true. I mean, technology, really, the way I think of it, it just magnifies human ability, for better or for worse. So you can put it to good uses and you can put it to bad uses. It just magnifies. So unfortunately, until human nature itself evolves, and hopefully...
I think we're in it's a transition period.
Yes.
It's just tough right now.
It could go either way.
Yeah.
It's like the atomic bomb, nuclear energy is a great asset. It could be a cheap source of power, or it can be weapon of mass destruction. It's the same with technology.
Yeah. Let's see, what was next? I guess since we're on this route, have you heard any about people putting microchips in their hands?
In various contexts, I've heard, I mean, on the good side, there are medical applications of implants that can help people, say, with neurological damage from an injury, something like that, to get mobility back. On the negative side, are you thinking of like implantation of like identity chips and things like that?
Yeah, I guess the company that came up with it in Sweden, I saw that they implement it in their hand, and so then they can have store bank information,
Right.
apartment. They just like swipe their hand.
Yes, that is coming, I believe. Um, just like everything else. I mean,
Yeah.
that could be used to greatly enhance people's security, to streamline our everyday lives. Imagine you just walk through the store, fill your grocery cart with items, and just walk out the door. And it scans everything and it scans you and it just puts it on your account or whatever.
Right.
Big time saver. On the other hand, it can give the government ways to, track the citizens.
Yeah, even more. Yeah.
Even more, and which could be used if it was in the wrong hands.
Yeah.
So that's a scary one, but it's probably coming.
Yeah.
We already chip our animals.
That's true, yeah. We're next. So I'm just going to jump back to some of the marketing stuff. I see a lot of these, the marketers are the best at, doing YouTube commercials.
Mm-hmm.
They always send ads and stuff. And they were talking about, a couple of guys I saw on an ad were talking about their AdWords software, and that they had some software. They were trying to say like they had the software that, no one else had, and stuff like that, where they could automate campaigns and kind of break down different ad campaigns into, different keywords and stuff like that. Do you know anything about that sort of automation, and if that is a difficult?
That's not my area of expertise, but that's the realm, that where Google made all of its money. Selling ads and putting them in search results, essentially, and then picking up on the AdWords. It wouldn't surprise me if somebody came up with a better algorithm than what Google has. Eventually, someone will probably eat their lunch. It's surprised me that it hasn't happened already, actually. That they still have as much of the market share as they do. You look at all the things that Google does, it still makes, as far as I know, and I haven't looked at this in a while, but it still makes a large percentage, if not the lion's share of its revenue, just off of ads, search ads.
And why are you surprised that no one is taking it over?
They did a wonderful job of owning that entire market. Yeah. Normally what happens after a period of years is competitors will come in and erode that. Microsoft tried with Bing, and they have a little bit of the market, but they weren't able to get much headway. Yahoo tried. Many have tried, but they can't seem to get any headway against Google.
I see.
It's like people are trained to do all their searches on Google.
Yeah.
And so that's where all the traffic is. And there would have to be some kind of reason for people to change their behavior. All of a sudden start using Bing instead of Google.
I try to do that sometimes.
Some people do, but
just because I heard about their they had those hearings. Google, I think they had hearings a couple months ago, and then the same day that they had those hearings, their building in China got set on fire or something like that. It was really odd.
I didn't hear about that one.
Yeah, and half of the building caught on fire. There was an explosion the same day. So then I started trying to use Bing more, but they buy everything. They own YouTube, I think.
Yes.
And Maps is huge and everything like that.
I think they're a great company. They've done a lot of great things. They monetize this one technology, but then all the rest of it. So many of their services they just let everyone use for free.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the reasons they still dominate is because they've put a huge amount of investment in improving search results. There are a lot of machine learning algorithms behind the scenes when you do a generic search in Google. Over the last 5-10 years, however long Google's been around, the quality of search has gone up and up and up.
Right.
The hits that you get. It's amazing the information you can get through a simple Google search, and how empowering that is, I think, to all of us. So more power to them. It just surprises me that by now someone hasn't leapfrogged them and eaten their lunch, but time will tell.
Yeah. Do you have any, last time so you were in Silicon Valley in the 80s and 90s. Is there like an exciting project that you work on or an exciting job that you had? Because that was like the boom of everything.
Yeah, my career was, I had very lucky timing. I graduated from Chico State in 1985, and that was just the very beginning of the PC software revolution. That you had the IBM PC, you had the Apple IIe. It was a few years before the Mac came out, before Windows. It was just the very beginning, and there were a lot of little companies that were developing software for the new platform, the new desktop model for doing business. Lotus existed, Microsoft existed, so you had word processors, databases, spreadsheets, and things like that. It's evolved from that. Now there's so many different applications that are available for every possible purpose you can imagine. And it seems like the trend has been on both sides. You have software packages like Adobe, Target, for example, that have gone very vertical, and they're targeted to the big Fortune 500 companies. But then on the other end, you have the app market, the smartphone apps, where it's just an app could literally just be 4 or 5 features, that you find useful. The early days of my career were probably the most fun and exciting. I got into a company called Software Publishing Corporation, and they were doing, for the Apple IIe and for the IBM PC, they were doing business productivity software. So this was before Microsoft Office was a big thing. Software publishing, the first product I worked on was called First Choice, and it was an integrated database, spreadsheet, word processor, and communication package. And it existed because in those days, programs just ran separately on the IBM operating system. There wasn't like a graphical user interface yet. So you would just fire up your package, and then everything you did was within that package. So we did the first kind of unified Microsoft Office-like utility. But instead of being a suite of tools, it was one program, one behemoth program running on the IBM PC. That was really fun because we were doing everything from scratch. There were no rules. We were just, I think at the time we were writing everything in, I can't remember if we were in Pascal or C. I think it was C. It was just a lot of fun, creativity. I don't remember there being a lot of schedules back then. We just did what we could do, week in and week out, and then we would have milestones and things. When we got features up and running, we'd decide, okay, we hit a milestone. But nowadays, the industry's matured a lot, and there are still little companies around like that. Startups are still very much like what I just described, kind of wearing lots of hats and not too much on the schedule or planning side, but a lot of innovation. Those companies still exist, but the majority of the jobs are now in these larger software companies. Like Adobe is a great company, but they're a big software company, and so they need process. And so, the big popular process that's out there now is called Agile or Scrum. Have you heard of this?
I've heard of it, yeah.
So what it is it puts the entire company on a cadence. So every certain number of weeks, and it's every 2 weeks, you'll have what are called these sprints. And before the sprint, you determine which tasks you want to complete during the sprint, and then after the sprint, you evaluate. And so the entire company is like constantly sprinting, and it cuts across the organization. It's not just the software engineers sprinting on their tasks. It's the accounting, and HR. Everybody's on this.
Like finals week.
A little bit. In the old days, like way back in the 80s and 90s, the cycles were longer. You had maybe a 12 to 18 month time period where you were working on the next release of the product, adding features, but the release was heavy. You had to physically manufacture the media that the software was on and distribute it through stores or the mail or whatever. So, in the very early days, that was 3.5-inch floppy disks. And later it became CD-ROMs and then DVDs. Nowadays, the whole shrink wrap thing is gone. When you release new software, you just put it out on the server and everyone gets it.
Yeah.
So it's changed the cadence. Instead of this behemoth, 12 to 18 month project with a big ramp up, and then, towards the deadline, you're working like crazy hours, and then all of a sudden you release and there's a big party and everyone goes on vacation. So that was it kind of was painful at certain times, but then you would get like this release, and then you would it was a long, cycle.
Yeah.
And you could kind of plan your life around it, and you'd have ups and downs. Now it's so
updates all the time.
It's so it's like this 2-week sprint cadence that corporate America, especially high-tech corporate America, seems to be embracing right now. It's good, but it's also bad. My personal opinion is that it's good for iterative progress on things. It also evens out the workload, so you avoid those big monster crunches every year or whatever, and that's probably good. But I think it also tends to make innovation a little bit harder. It's hard to be creative in a fixed time period. That was a challenge for me in the later part of my career, is trying to have fun and be creative in the context of this very, I don't want to be overly negative. I don't like sprinting.
Because that you have to sprint right now. And then in a few weeks you're going to sprint.
It just
again.
never ends.
And
There's
then,
literally, you're either at the beginning of the sprint, you're in the middle, or at the end, and the next one starts the following day. There's no break.
Oh, you're working on different things in those sprints.
Yeah, so like, let's say we started a sprint today.
Yeah.
We'd have a set of tasks. We'd crunch away on them for 10 days.
Yeah.
Or up to the last day, right? 2 weeks. Then we'd stop for 1 day. We'd say, okay, how did that go? Now let's plan the next sprint.
So just 1 day.
It's never ends.
Oh, wow.
So it gets to be it can get to be a grind. So and even just think about the word. I mean,
I know.
how can a person sprint?
You need to walk sometimes.
Exactly. And so I think it has a lot of positive attributes. It gives a lot of visibility to management, so they can plan better and budget better. They can see progress better. It increases visibility. It's good for the business in that way. But I think it's harder to innovate in that realm. For a young person like yourself, if you're thinking about your career path, I highly recommend starting out a smaller company, a startup if you can, because there can be, if you get super lucky, that can be, a big opportunity if they give you equity in the company and then, takes off or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But also, there's much more opportunity for growth and just your personal growth, because you kind of just get thrown in the mix, and there's all kinds of design going on, and it's more intense. Startups are more intense, higher, more hours, but it's also more rewarding. You'll grow your reputation faster, you'll learn faster, and you'll get a taste of the true creative spark and innovation.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you said, you get to see everything from start to finish.
Start to finish, you get to wear a lot of hats in a startup. You won't just be pigeonholed. Oh, you are a entry-level software engineer, and you work within this little box.
Right.
At a startup, you could be a marketing person one minute, or you could be a programmer the next minute. It depends on how small we're talking about. But if you get in a company and they're really in the ground floor, and I think it's best to do that when you're young, before you have a lot of commitments, obligations, mortgage, family, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Those things tend to make stability more valuable than excitement.
Right.
But when you're your age, you can afford to try a few startups before you settle down.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm trying to do with I would like to kind of do some digital marketing on my own, freelance, and pitch ideas to, real estate agents that I know, or people with their own fitness companies, and just try to start that way, and then, gain skills, because that's the best way, like you're saying, to gain skills.
The best thing you can do of all is, start your own.
Yeah.
And then, you're in complete control. You want, if you're going to go down that road, I would advise you to grow organically and just build up slowly, rather than the temptation is, if you start your own business and start to succeed, people are going to approach you with offers. We'll give you, $1 million for 40% of your company or whatever. And it's very tempting, because you can take that and accelerate your growth very quickly. But now all of a sudden, it's not your company anymore,
right?
Because you've got venture capital breathing down your neck all the time.
Right.
If you're going to go down that road of being an independent entrepreneur, try to keep over 50% of ownership to yourself, and don't sell off too quick to a VC.
Well, hey, if I ever got an offer for something like that, would be amazing anyways. But
well, it is. My philosophy is, like, if I ever did anything like that, I would want complete control of the company, and then if someone wanted to buy me out, then I'll be gone.
Right.
But I don't want to be in the situation where I'm beholden to venture capital investors, because everything's good if you're getting the anticipated growth, but things can become painful and difficult if that doesn't happen.
I bet. I can't imagine. I'm debating right now, I guess, since I started learning Python, I'm debating kind of if I should maybe go get a certificate, a JC, in databases or software development or data science, or if I should maybe go down something like Coursera and get they have those micro degrees, which they seem credible, and I kind of like learning on the computer, because I can replay the videos, I can stop them, I can work when I want, don't have to go to class. Do you think something like that is necessary, other than self-taught?
I think that even more valuable than certifications is projects that you've completed. You're essentially building up a portfolio of problems that you've solved, whatever those are, products you've created, or you're building a portfolio, and along the way, you're learning new skills that you needed to solve that problem. But being able to sit down in an interview and say, okay, well, we had this business problem to solve, and this is the solution we came up with. And along the way, I had to take Coursera, and I learned Python. That's interesting to employers, but much more interesting is the problems that you've solved with it. I think a stack of certificates can be valuable if you want to get a job, a safe, secure, steady job, like at a big old company, like IBM, or you name it. Then the certificates can help you if you have a lot of those on your resume. Let's say you decided you wanted to be a networking person. In that realm, certifications definitely help get interviews. But if you're going more down the road of freelancing, especially in the marketing realm, I think you'll find that just your portfolio of problems solved will make you more interesting to people than a pile of certificates that you've gathered. Even that's secondary. It's not that I think ongoing education is very valuable and important. You'll stagnate very quickly, especially with the current pace of acceleration in technology is pretty difficult to keep up with. You have to stay on top of the newest technologies that are related to whatever realm you're working in.
Right.
And so that will just happen naturally. I think you just learn whatever you need to learn as you go along. So don't just learn Python for the sake of learning Python. Learn Python because you have a real problem that you need to solve with it, and solve that problem with Python. And then you'll have the best of both worlds.
Right. I guess I'm trying to do the best of both worlds with having the option if I want to freelance, but also having like some safety if I need to just get a job. And
there's nothing wrong with getting certifications and things, but I wouldn't make that your primary goal.
Right now, I took your advice, went to Udemy, and just got it was $12 for Python bootcamp.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, especially when you're kind of cross-pollinating between the degree that you got in econ, and you're trying to get the programming as sort of an add-on. I think that's a great way to do it. But find real problems to solve with it.
Does that mean look up problems to solve, or just if I'm just in my own trying to build a business type thing, just try to figure out if I can solve that problem with programming?
Yes, whatever problems your business needs to solve, go find the right technologies and solve them. And if Python's one of them, great. But if it's not, just move on and do something else.
Yeah, I'm going to go to, in April, there's a marketing technology conference in San Jose, and I just signed up and just said that I have a business. I mean, it just said, does your company make less than 20 million? 20 million? I was like, yeah, it does. So I think it'll be fun to just see what's going on there.
Oh yeah, those kind of things are great for networking too.
Yeah, that's what
there's always people out there looking for talent and that have specific problems that need solving. And that's a great thing to do.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. Let's see, maybe one or two more questions. Oh, what languages were you using at your last job?
So I guess I could tell you the progression. So when I was going to school here in the early 80s, it was the high-level programming language, and it was Fortran and Pascal, and C was just barely coming out. By the time I graduated, C had become the main language, and then when object-oriented programming came along, it was C++. So that's like an add-on to the language that provided object-oriented features. And then the big switch was Java. So I was a C++ developer probably for about, it's a 32-year career. So probably about 20 of those 32 years, I was mostly a C++ programmer. And then the last 10 years have mostly been Java. So those have been the major chord, if you will, of my programming. C++ and Java, which are very similar, but then mixed in with that, a smattering of JavaScript, which is what you need on the front end, the browsers. Then a lot of scripting languages, just shell script, because I've mostly been a Unix backend developer. So shell scripting is what you use to do utility programs on Unix boxes. Shell script, Perl. Have you ever heard of Perl?
Mm-mm.
It's an older programming language similar to Python. It's a scripted programming language. What else?
When people say Java, they're talking about Java, they're not talking about JavaScript.
Those are actually, they have very similar names, but they're completely separate in different languages.
So,
Java started out as the concept of program once and run everywhere. So in the older C or C++ model, you write your program in C and then you compile it to a particular platform. So let's say you wanted to, like in my early career, we had business productivity software that ran on an IBM PC, and it was called First Choice. So our First Choice source code was whatever, 200,000 lines of C, C++. We would compile it, and it would run just on that IBM PC. That's it. You couldn't take that binary image and run it on an Apple, for example. You'd have to take that source again, recompile it over onto the other hardware, and then you'd have an executable for that machine. So one source code, but multiple compiles. Java originally came along to solve that problem. You could compile it just once and run it anywhere, because you have, on each machine, they would install what's called the Java virtual machine, and it would interpret the program in real time as it ran. So that's, Java evolved as a solution to the have to compile it for every machine problem. It's syntactically very similar to C and C++. If you knew one, you could quickly learn the other, at least the basics. Now JavaScript came from a completely different angle. It was where we have a web page on a browser and it's static. It's drawn itself and it's done. We want to make it a dynamic page. We want to make it so if you had one corner of the page was showing a real-time stock quote, that it could refresh that like every 30 seconds without reloading the whole page. So that's where JavaScript was born. They wanted a programming language that would run within the context of the browser. It's also very similar the way, if you looked at a JavaScript program that was written down, you would see that its syntax is also very, very similar to Java and similar to C++. They're like cousins in terms of how they look, but their context of where they run and where they came from is very different. Whereas a language like Python is very different. If you look at the syntax of how you write a Python program versus a C or C++ or a JavaScript program, quite different. So the three of these are cousins. It'd be kind of like saying, if you knew how to play the piano, you would be able to learn how to play the organ faster, right? They're cousins. They're different. They're very different, but they're cousins. Whereas something like the flute, okay, maybe you'd be able to read the music, but physically it would be completely different.
Right.
So that's like there are categories of languages that are very close.
Yeah.
C, C++, Java, JavaScript are cousins, and a
Okay.
lot of other languages, newer languages like Python, Ruby, they're similar, but they have big differences. So there are a lot of languages out there. Python's a good one to learn. Java's a good one to learn. JavaScript's a good one to learn.
Yeah, because I see just kind of reading up on Google Analytics and stuff, that just to know some JavaScript is good so that you can implement tags or change the code a little bit.
Yep.
Cool. Thank you for that insight. I guess my last question would be, what is something that you see students lacking when they come out of college, or what is something that the students should prepare for before working in technology?
I would say the number one thing is probably being comfortable working in a team environment. As a student, I would say most of what we do as students is individual. And then once in a while, we get assigned to a group project. It usually doesn't go very well. Yeah. One person does 2/3 of the work or whatever, and it's over in 3 weeks. Once you start, a career, you're going to be in a team environment all the time. There are going to be people that you get along with great and other people not so much. Those interpersonal skills it's difficult to teach that and to learn, but I think the more of that you can do in your student career, the better. And that can include just socializing, being a part of clubs. If when you do your senior project, collaborate with somebody. I think it's a really great thing to do, like you were in economics. I don't know if they had senior project in your major.
Well, my big senior project was probably in GIS.
Okay.
And we had to solve like a real world problem and make a big poster. And
right.
Actually, for that class, he made it because we had less people individual.
Okay.
But in order to get it done, I had to get help from so many different people. And so yeah, everyone was.
That's good. I think some of the best senior projects that I've seen are ones that you get like a software person and a hardware person. So like a computer science major and an engineering major, and they collaborate and they do their senior project together. So they do the hardware and the software. The more of that you can do, the more experience, either student experience or work experience while you're going to college, so that you can show employers that you're able to work effectively in a team, the better. I think that's a big one. For me, honestly, now I don't know if it's true anymore, but when I finished school, I felt like work was actually easier than school was. The first 5 years of my career, you work a lot of hours, but it was more fun, and it seemed to me less taxing than my college experience overall. I didn't do myself any favors. I had to compress all my CS classes into like 2.5 years because I came up through the junior college route. So I got my AA in 2 years, which was great. But then I had to do all of the core CS classes. And then I was back then they had different tracks for computer science. So I chose the math science. So on top of all the computer classes and the programming, I had to take 3 semesters of physics, 3 semesters of calculus, other things. A lot of math. Yeah. I ended up with a math minor, and just about killed me. I mean, it was sink or swim, and luckily I swam. But compared to all that, when I finally started working, I felt like it was actually just the day in and day out grind seemed a lot less, and it was more fun. I mean, I enjoyed my college years, but not the class parts, not the work part that much. So I would just say skill set, the more people skills you have, the better. And be prepared to work hard, especially the beginning of your career, because you set your reputation pretty early. You begin working in a new job, a new position. Your reputation is going to be probably determined within the first 6 months that you're there. So I think it's always wise to just work hard, especially when you're young. Don't be afraid to put in the big hours in the early part of your career. Later on, it'll pay dividends. Maybe you can get more into management and where it's a little bit less of that. But don't be afraid to grind early. And don't be afraid to take a risk on a smaller company early in your career, because later on you may not be able to. you won't be able to take the risk once you have kids and a mortgage and all that.
Yeah.
If you go down that road.
Well, yeah, and that I agree. I think, and then to the interpersonal connections, when you're with a smaller company, they might be willing to take more of a chance on you if they like you more.
Yeah, and the startups like new grads too, because you're coming in at a lower salary level and you have a lot of energy and enthusiasm and trainability and all that stuff. So it's just a good fit. I recommend that everyone try a few startups in the beginning and see how it goes. Maybe you get super lucky and then you just be able to do whatever you want the rest of your life. Think of the first 100 people that joined Google.
Whatever happened to software publishing corporation?
So software publishing was great for about 7 years. What happened to them was they had too many eggs in one basket. Their flagship product at the time was called Harvard Professional Graphics. Essentially what it was PowerPoint. It was PowerPoint before there was a PowerPoint. And Microsoft came along right around when Windows 3.0 came out, when they broke the 1 megabyte memory barrier, and all of a sudden Windows became the new big hot thing. Microsoft had already Word and Excel, and then they added PowerPoint and they gave it away for free, and that completely destroyed the market for presentation graphics software market. Just went, and because they just took our product, literally took our product and did it, they refined it and made it.
You said Windows?
Yeah, Windows 3.0. So right around, I got super lucky because I worked there about 7 years. I'm the kind of guy, like I go somewhere and I just stay. Like unless I get dragged out or kicking and screaming or the building's on fire or something, I'll be the last one there in 100 years or whatever. Because I don't like interviewing. I don't like changing jobs. I don't like doing my resume and all that. And as long as I'm happy, reasonably happy doing what I'm doing, I just stay. Well, what happened at SPC was literally 2 months before that happened, 2 friends of mine went to a startup, and they basically literally dragged me. They forced me to go.
Right before that happened? Wow.
Pretty much. So I got really lucky. It was sad because SBC was really a great, fun company. They used to have every year we would have this party, and they would set up circus tents in the parking lot. I mean, it was just crazy.
Did your friends do that because they had a feeling that was going to happen?
No, they didn't know either. They went to this other smaller company that was doing it was educational authoring software for DVD-ROM titles, and it was basically pretty cool. It was like visual programming. So you had this, you were programming, but you were doing it with these icons. So you could create a sequence of events, and you could do conditionals and loops and things like that, but it was all visual. And then the market for them was these kiosks or like educational CD-ROM titles. So I was there for several years, and then from then on, everything, the way I ended up at Adobe was just through mergers and acquisitions. Now, a couple of years after I started working, this is a magazine from 1980, October 86. So this is about a year after I started working. They did an interview. Software publishing was doing great at the time, and they came in and did an interview on the software engineering process, anatomy of a product rollout. So all these were the people I was working with. This was actually my office, and that's me in 1985.
Wow. And that does look like a fun office.
It was really a fun, cool environment. They hired just all college grads, and then all the managers were, like a little bit older. So it was just a really fun environment. That was my boss, Ed Mitchell. And they did this. This was very early in the software engineering process, for the IBM PC. They were very interested in how we were doing the software engineering process and how we were succeeding. So they did this huge write-up on it. And they just happened to use my office as the picture there. So that's kind of fun.
Can I see this?
Sure. I thought you'd get a kick out of that.
That is. And I don't know why Uncle Sam is at the computer. I mean, because it's like the new America.
Might have been the tax software or something like that. Computing in America now. Yeah, see, this was the very early years of people coming online with desktop computing.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was just really good luck that I happened to graduate, the very beginning of all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had a good career. I think in hindsight, my first love has always been teaching. I would say I've been a good software engineer at times, maybe flirted with a little bit of greatness now and then, but I think my real vocation and calling in life is teaching. And so I'm looking forward to the next chapter. I'm probably not going to be doing software engineering full time much longer. I'll be teaching again, probably at least half time, if not full time, starting in the fall. Probably keep doing that for a while.
Yeah, new chapters, right? That's going to be.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I have been teaching part time for 10 years, but I'm looking forward to devoting.
Were you working from home?
Yes, that's another little part of my story. Right around 90, well, I got married in 92. We started a family. We had 2 little girls, and both my wife and I were working, and the kids were in daycare. Well, my mom moved up here. She was living in Paradise, and we would come visit. I had always loved this area ever since, going to Chico State. And I always said, if I ever get a chance to move back up here, I will. Well, in 1996, we bought a place up here, and I've been working remotely since then from up here.
Wow. Well, that's a perfect segue, because my last question was, what are the best ways to be able to work remotely?
Oh.
Because so you were in a position where I guess you were a good enough developer where you could work from home?
Yeah, I mean, I think this could be a whole separate podcast, to be honest with you, because there's a lot of interesting trade-offs with working remote. But the short answer is the best timing for doing the remote thing is either if you're just already totally a freelance type person and you're just doing contract work, you can work remotely.
Yeah.
I mean, that fits. But if you want to be a full-time employee, and especially a full-time software engineer, the best thing to do is start at the company on site and then develop deep expertise in whatever product or technology that you're working with, to the point where your most valuable time is where you have a task to do and and you know what to do. You don't need to interact with a lot of people. You don't need a lot of training. You just need time and quiet.
Right.
That's where I found myself, like in the early 90s. Like my biggest obstacle to productivity was just the office environment was kind of loud and there were a lot of distractions. And so for me, I decided early in my career that I really didn't want to go into management. So I was an individual contributor. So it kind of made sense. I had to transition in phases though, because even now, big companies especially, haven't really embraced the remote employee thing that much. There's a lot of resistance to it.
Yeah.
That's why you go to the Google campus. I mean, it's beautiful. They don't want you to ever leave.
Right.
You know, they provide everything because they want everyone there. And, you know, I can see why. I mean, collaboration is very important. But if you really want to be a full-time remote employee, you want to start on site and then slowly transition. So I talked to my boss. I said, I'm moving, but I'm going to come in every week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So I basically just drove back and forth. Like the first, I'd say 6 months, I would drive down Sunday night and I'd come back Wednesday night. And so I was down three out of the 5 days every week. And that got to be a grind. And then my boss said, well, things seem to be going well. Why don't you do every other week? And then it was every month, and then it was every quarter. And then pretty soon I was just full-time remote. I don't think it's very easy to be hired as a remote employee unless you have very specific skill set. And then it's more likely you're going to be contract anyway for, you know, the term that they need.
Right.
If you're really interested in being a remote person, I would say freelancing and contracting is the easiest way to do that. Unfortunately, I would have predicted, 20 years ago, 1996 is when I started, 22 years ago. Is that right? Yeah. That I went remote. I would have predicted by now that would be the norm. Like most people would work from home most of the time.
Yeah.
But it just hasn't worked out that way. And I don't really know why. It would make so much sense. It would save so much time and energy.
I saw something recently that there's this obvious push again for that, and that companies are noticing that maybe people are able to get work done, and they notice how people work so much on their computer when they're at home anyways,
Yeah.
and that it might be coming.
The compromise I see a lot is most companies will let their employees work at home like Tuesdays and Thursdays or Wednesdays and Fridays. So it's
I see.
a lot of the last 3 or 4 positions I had, most of my team was doing that. They were only coming to the office about 3 days a week. So it's slowly getting there. There are some trade-offs. I mean, it's not 100%. I can't say it's just 100% better to be a remote employee. There's some big benefits to that, especially if you have a family and that and other things outside work. But there's some downside too. You miss out on, especially if you want the management track. I mean, it's going to be difficult to get promotions and things if you're out of sight, out of mind. It's difficult to manage remotely. I did miss the social aspect, being able to, even though it kind of drove me crazy when I had work to do and there's all this noise, but then there were other times where I just wanted to hang out and talk to people, whatever. So that's a little bit of a minus. I would say, and then at those times where you get job changes, like if there's a big layoff or something, it's a little easier to let go of the remote people than the on-site people. So I think you're a higher risk. And if that does happen, especially if you're out a ways, like if you live in Chico, but you work in Silicon Valley, it's not easy to pick up the phone and get another job without going back down there. So I think early in the career, it's smarter to be on site. And then later, if you can and you want to, you could try to go remote.
Yeah, I've just been trying to think of ways to be able to do some traveling and also have a job.
Well, that can work very nicely if you are either, running your own company, and then you can set whatever schedule you want, or you're doing contract work. You can decide, well, I don't work in the summer,
Right.
I only take
That's
contracts, in the spring and the fall, or whatever you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can travel whenever you want.
I haven't thought of that actually. Yeah, setting a couple months to take off.
That's what a lot of people do. A lot of times these contracts are 2-3 months kind of thing, or even less sometimes. And you can decide when you want to take the next one.
Oh, then that's going to be something I'm going to start looking into more.
It gives you a lot of freedom. Contracting, freelancing can be nice. It's just like anything. There's trade-offs. It's harder to predict your income. You don't get the medical benefits, which can be costly. Not as much when you're young, but when you get to be my age, it's just somewhere around $2,000 a month for medical and dental, and for my wife and I.
Wow.
So that's a factor. And it's hard to predict where your next contract is coming from and all that. But again, if you're young, just save. If you're going to do contracting, you got to get in the mode of saving. Have a year's income in the bank all the time. Live below your means, and be able to wait out 3 or 6 months between contracts if you need to. Because it's, your income is going to be like this.
Yeah, that's something to think about for sure.
It's not going to be like, that's what, the corporation, that being an employee of a corporation is nice.
Yeah.
Especially a big one, because you have that steady, you get your 2 or 3% raise every year or whatever, and it's comfortable.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot to think about.
It is.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for doing my first podcast interview.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you for listening, everyone. If you go to Chico State, take a class with Professor Herring. Thank you, and see you next time.